What's going on, ladies and gents? Welcome to Veve Investments. On today's episode, we're going to be recapping David Yu's most recent interview with Captain Veve, as well as talking about some collectibles that I think are being overshadowed in light of some newer brands and IP dropping on the platform. If you guys enjoy the content, make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see in a future episode. Without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy. So I was able to review the video that David Yu did with Captain Veve. It was about an hour and a half long, but it was more of just a kind of collector to collector talk. There wasn't much discussion about the business. So I have 4 points from that interview, but to avoid the video from being too short, I make sure that we discuss some collectibles that I also think are being overshadowed on the platform, just considering what's been dropping lately. Now, in today's episode, we're only going to be talking about 5 or 6 different collectibles. I do actually have the intention of creating a full video with a full list. So keep in mind that there are many collectibles that we don't discuss in today's episode. So with that being said, let's hop into the first part of this episode, and that's going to be David Yu's most recent interview. So one of the first things that David mentions towards the beginning of the interview is that the team is going to be releasing ways to make art with our collectibles. This can really mean anything. I've actually had a particular idea in mind for the channel's store, and I've been kind of keeping it on the back burner. I'm going to explain it now because I think it'll be funny if this is what the team ends up introducing. Like I said, this can mean anything, but the idea that I've had is kind of like a plug and play style of art. So you can take your collectibles and then almost create a scene on a picture frame with them and then move them around and create your own environment or whatever scene you want to create. So my intention with the channel store was I was going to create 2D images of almost like the old style platformer games. And then I was going to create a range of character NFTs that you can collect, some more rare, some less rare, and then you can create your own scene and move them around and plug them into the environment however you wish. So I can picture something like this with the Marvel Mighties. There's quite a bit that have been released now, so you can do a lot with them. But the way he brings it up was very vague, so, you know, like I said, this can mean anything. This is just an idea that I've had in my mind. But what do you guys think are ways that the team is going to allow us to create art with our collectibles? Now, David also mentioned something that he describes as collectible dioramas. So David's vision is to allow us to essentially take what he refers to as a toy box into AR. So he was talking about essentially creating scenes with multiple different pieces in a single environment, but choosing what those pieces are before you bring them into AR. So from my understanding, the way he was picturing it is you would have like a certain number of slots that you can slot in a collectible, right? You would have 10 out of 10 slots or whatever, and then you can choose 10 collectibles that you can bring into AR and create a scene with all 10. Next, I want to shine some light on the Monster Hunter brand because this is an Eastern brand similar to that of Pilly Fantasy and Ultraman, and I think it's a brand that a lot of people in the West are it's kind of, you know, flying a little under our radar. So David does mention that Monster Hunter is one of the biggest IP companies out there in the gaming space. He does also say that he thinks that the Japanese people will think of this similar to that of a partner statue when they start coming on the app. I've personally started to look into this brand a little bit more. I wasn't too familiar with it beforehand, so just in case anybody's in the same boat as me, now you know. And the last part I'm going to discuss before we move into the second part of this episode is going to be a Banksy update. So we know that we can expect Banksy pieces on the app eventually. Editcom is going to be the IP behind that, and they've released a series of sculptures of interpretations of what Banksy did as street art. So the first series that we can expect is going to be Banksy's Flower Bomber. Okay, so this is a big piece of his, but David does confirm that it will be released in 4 different colorways to complete the set. However, the team is waiting until waitlist has been fully rolled out. So that could be weeks, that could be months, depending on issues that they find within the beta. But another thing I'm going to point out here is right before David mentions Banksy, he mentions Bear Bricks and how he's a big fan of Bear Bricks, and Medicom is also responsible for those. So Bear Bricks, although they have not been confirmed, it is something that I would expect in the future on Veve, just considering how close David is with them and they're owned by the same company. So that's going to conclude the interview. Like I mentioned, pretty short. So I didn't want to just leave it there. Let's hop into some collectibles that right now I think are being a little overshadowed. just considering some of the newer brands and IP that have dropped on the platform. So the first collectible I'm going to talk about is Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, and this is one that I picked up last week. Might I remind some people that this is Walt Disney's first ever character creation. He's the precursor to the iconic character Mickey Mouse. Everyone knows who that is. And he's one of the first major animated characters to have a distinct personality and star in a successful series of cartoons. Now, the rights to this character were actually taken away from Disney as he was making the character, and I believe he lost the rights to Universal. But because the 95-year copyright has now expired for Oswald, Disney is starting to use him again. And I actually have the intention of trying to put something together with the character as well. So keep your eyes out for that in the future. But nevertheless, an iconic character and definitely one that's flying under the radar right now. Next on the list is going to be Givenchy Pride. So some people might be rolling their eyes right now. I want to remind people that out of all of the collectibles on the platform right now, there are only 2 pieces backed by Givenchy. They're a huge brand with a long history. I think some people may look at these pieces and just see all the colors, right, associated with Pride, and completely forget that Givenchy is associated with it. But their creations have been favored by high-profile clients, including royalty, celebrities, influential figures, right? To this day, Givenchy still remains at the forefront of the fashion industry, and they even did a recent collaboration with Disney featuring Oswald that we just talked about. Next up, and I think a lot of people will agree with me here, the stats just support it, but Pixar Pals. The whole set is undervalued, but the main 3, in my opinion, are going to be Woody, McQueen, and Mike Wazowski. Those 3 alone are going to include some of Pixar's largest characters, but these characters have become household names, and the prices that they're sitting at on the app right now are very, very low. These are going to be the first appearance of the characters on Veve, but also on the blockchain. Cars is one of the highest grossing movie franchises of all time. So these 3 are going to be no-brainers for me, but if you want to complete the set, there's also going to be 2 more. There's going to be the house from Up, and then I forget her name, but the girl from The Incredibles. Next up, I want to talk about the anime Ultraman series that dropped all the way back in season 1. I think the whole set looks awesome. I picked up the one you see on screen, and then I actually picked up the uncommon as my second piece. But Ultraman has the equivalent cultural significance to that of Superman in North America. The character played a crucial role in popularizing the special effect genre, and the franchise actually introduced the giant hero concept. So having some form of giant hero protect Earth from, villains or aliens or whatever it may be. Second to last, I want to talk about Disney's golden moments. So I think we're now getting to a point where these are starting to become overshadowed. I know we had the Platinum Moments drop, but a lot of these pieces are now starting to drop real low, including significant ones in my opinion like Elsa and C-3PO. So these include some of the first appearances of some of Disney's most successful characters ever. Elsa, Winnie the Pooh and Piglet, Walt and Mickey, Timon and Pumbaa, the Disney logo itself. And might I also add that this was Disney's first series on the app under their branding. They released Spider-Man before, which was technically owned by them, but that was Marvel. And last but not least, I wanted to include a Star Wars piece. I do have 2 honorable mentions after this, but I want to talk about Boba Fett, because Boba Fett is the highest grossing Star Wars collectible in the physical space for the franchise, yet he is grossly undervalued on Veve. So despite his limited screen time, his presence, armor, and mysterious nature have made him a fan favorite among Star Wars fans. Speaking of his armor, actually, his armor and helmet have actually become symbols of the Star Wars franchise. And then over on Disney Plus, you have the newer series that dropped with him. So with him having been reintroduced to newer generations of viewers, this further solidifies his significance for the franchise. I think in this instance, if you pick up the common, uncommon, or ultra rare, or you get the whole set, I think it's a good move regardless. He's a huge character, and like I said, very undervalued. So I do have 2 honorable mentions here, but they're going to be pieces that recently dropped on the app, and I wanted to include them because they are both pieces that David mentioned in the interview with Captain Veve. The first one is going to be Frank Miller, so I do have his Joker piece up on screen, but he did drop 2, a Batman one included. And then the other honorable mention is going to be Jabba the Hutt. So David did mention that he was quite surprised it didn't sell out. He thinks it's a massive character. You got to have one in your collection. And he did also make the comment that they're not going to be releasing another Jabba the Hutt. At least that's what I heard. But I think for any Star Wars fan, this is a must-have. If you're going to pick up Boba, Darth, Luke, you got to pick up a Jabba, right? Ladies and gents, that's going to conclude today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. I have been working on some interesting topics in the background here. I am quite excited to bring them to the channel, but they're taking a little longer to put together than I expected, so bear with me. I'm not entirely sure what our next episode is going to be, but I do want to review Veve's most recent survey that they released to the community. So if you guys are interested in talking about that, I do think there's a lot of value built into that survey that is just going over people's heads. So if that is something that you want me to discuss and break down on the channel, make sure to comment down below. If you guys enjoy the content, make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see in a future episode. And as for our next, I'll catch you then.